We don't reprocess our fuel here. It only goes once through. But if this after it's been made one trip through the reactor, it still contains over 90% of its energy. So burying it is like putting a log in the fireplace and burning off the bark, and then going and burying the log. It can be reprocessed. They do it quite well in France. And France now has I think it's about 14 years of fuel extra from recycling. In other words, if for some reason they couldn't get a gram of uranium for 14 years, they could still run all of their power plants. In the US, we don't do that. Nevertheless, the average lifetime share per capita for each American could fit in one small teacup. The annual waste from a power reactor, one typical power reactor, could fit in the bed of a standard pickup truck. You don't do that because it would flatten the axles. It's so heavy and dense, but that by volume it could fit. The amount of spent fuel from our 104 reactors comes to 2,000 tons a year. The amount of waste from our coal-fired plants comes to 100 million tons per year. That would all fit in a train 9,600 miles long of coal cars. That is from New York to LA 3 times. All of the nuclear waste generated in this country from, while that fuel has been making 17.7 trillion kilowatt hours, would fit in a single Walmart with room to spare. 55,000 tons. People talk about these staggering quantities of spent nuclear fuel. It's really not staggering. The staggering waste from making baseload electricity comes from coal. Unlike coal waste, which is mostly dispersed into the environment and into our tissues, and causing hundreds of thousands of cases of lung and heart disease a year from the waste. But nuclear fuel is always isolated and shielded throughout its journey from cradle to grave. We're safely storing spent fuel right now in interim storage. After it's cooled in pools, it's transferred to thick concrete casks on concrete pads. These are quite low to the ground, quite safe, quite secure, and they can stay there. That fuel could stay there for a century. I would bet any amount of money it's not going to stay there. It's going to be taken out and reprocessed. But let's say that the U.S. continues on its present plan, which I don't believe it's going to do, and ships that spent fuel to Yucca Mountain. First of all, Yucca Mountain has to get open, and it's by no means certain whether that's going to happen. It's suffered a lot of political setbacks. In the past year or so, Sandia National Laboratories has taken over the science end of Yucca Mountain. All these years, Yucca Mountain has been poorly managed, in my opinion, and in the opinion of a lot of people in the technical community. This doesn't mean it's not safe. It means that the administration of it has been poor. And one of the things that lacked was a lead national lab to oversee all the science and handle it. Sandia National Labs has a good track record with putting together a successful nuclear waste repository, and I'll get to that in a minute. So the project now has a lead lab in Sandia, and the people working on it are optimistic about the science. They are reviewing all the data, doing risk assessment again, and it already seems as if there are no technical obstacles to the repository, only political ones. It can safely isolate this fuel for tens of thousands of years in the mountain. But as I say, I doubt if that's going to, it might be temporarily stored in the mountain, but it's going to be taken out again and reused. It's too valuable. The repository that Sandia National Labs got open in 1999 is called the Waste Isolation Pilot Plant. And how many of you have heard of the Waste Isolation Pilot Plant? About 5, 6 people. 7, 8. Don't fear to put up 2 hands. Okay. I heard about it because I come from New Mexico, and I kept going back and visiting, and I was quite indignant about nuclear waste being stored in my state. Down in the southwest part, the southeastern corner of the state, I pictured trucks, dump trucks with smoldering, glowing waste backing up to Carlsbad Caverns or the White Sands and dumping the waste. But that was because I read a very progressive newspaper and that characterized it that way. In fact, thousands of studies were done on this piece of land. The actual repository is about 1 square mile. It's half a mile underground, deep in a salt bed. The National Academy of Sciences recommended deep geologic disposal for long-term sequestration of nuclear waste, because there's a time when you can't actively guard it anymore, and this way it's passively guarded. And whether you approve or disapprove of nuclear power or nuclear anything, we have waste and it does need to be put away. And some of it we can reuse, but some of it we can't. So this salt bed is stable. It's 230 million years old. It has been unaffected by climate change and rain and all of that, earthquakes that have happened over the years. A salt bed, if you have a salt bed, you have a very stable environment. It's deep. An elevator ride takes a long time, believe me, to get down to where the plant is. They give tours. I suggest you go there and take a look. The local people like the waste isolation plant. They're partisans of it. They want to expand that corner of the state. It's already kind of crummy with oil rigs and natural gas refineries and all kinds of fossil fuel operations down there. So it's not like it's the Grand Canyon or something there. And they want to add, there are 2 uranium enrichment plants that are in the works there. And they also would like to build a reprocessing plant there, have the spent nuclear fuel from commercial plants come to New Mexico, be put in interim storage, and at some point reprocessed, and the very 60% of the volume of the waste would be reduced, and that remaining residue, which can't be used for anything useful that we know of right now, maybe in the future we might, can be cooled for about 80 years and then put into the waste isolation pilot plant salt bed. At some point, the shafts of that repository will be filled and backfilled and so on, and warning markers for future generations will be put on it.